Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden. Welcome to Sunday, October 20th, 2024. Hope you're having a great weekend. I've been pretty well myself, if you recall the old skit from SCTV with John Candy doing the mayor of Melonville. How you all doing today? Doing pretty well myself. Well, it's been a fairly decent weekend. Weather's been wonderful here in Ottawa. I can't believe the kind of fall we've had. Really haven't had our first frost yet. And here it is, October 20th. Well, hope that bodes well for the winter. Anyway, when we come back, have you noticed, or is it just me, that Kamala Harris and Justin Trudeau seem to be in sync? They seem to be almost separated at birth. If that's, I know, not really possible. But there seems to be a very distinct similarity in what they say. I wonder if that's because they're getting it from the same source. When we come back, more about that. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist. Yes, please like the broadcast. I know you've all been doing that. You've all been so supportive. And our membership has got, what we're trying to do, of course, is hit 40,000 members before Christmas or before New Year's Eve. I think, what was it last year? We were trying to hit 20, I think it was last year at that time. And we did it with your help. So I think we can hit 40 this year. And just keep responding. And we're going to have a look at some of your comments later. So please put your comments in. I read them afterwards, by the way, if I don't look at them during the show. And I try at times, of course, to put some up. And I'm just going to see what we have here right now, actually. And a little bit of housekeeping, actually, because we remember yesterday we were talking about Jordan Peterson and how he might sue Justin Trudeau, because Justin Trudeau alleged without any evidence that Russian news was paying Jordan Peterson and, of course, other people as well. And it's absolutely insane that Justin Trudeau can get away with this. He's on the stand, by the way, and to say that Jordan Peterson and Tucker Carlson are somehow in the pay of Russia, or essentially Russian agents. That's what he said. And to just be allowed to say that without any shred of evidence, I think he should know. Apparently, Jordan Peterson's daughter is saying he can't sue him because Justin Trudeau is protected. I don't know if that's true. And I'm not saying she's wrong, but I don't know if that's true. A president is protected from unlawful acts committed while on duty. And this is, the Supreme Court recently ruled again in favor of this, that a president can't be prosecuted for acts committed while on duty as president. And so I don't think that's applicable to Canadian leaders or Canadian prime ministers. I've reached out to Viva Fry, who has been on the show, and asked him for his comment. And he's telling me he needs to know a little more information, but he might get back to us. I'd like to have him on this week, actually, to discuss this. How do you guys feel about that? Wouldn't it be nice to have Viva Fry back on the show to discuss whether or not Justin Trudeau could be sued, and whether Jordan Peterson, or for that, let's Tucker Carlson can sue. But I think, Tucker looks at this as probably as a badge of honor when Justin Trudeau calls you a Russian asset. It is so ridiculous. So, update. It's the latest I've seen this morning. By the time a lot of people see this today, this might be old news. I don't know what's happening in BC. But, my first question is, and I grew up in BC. I grew up on Vancouver Island. Yeah, my father was in the military, as I've said many times. So was born and raised in Comox, British Columbia. And if anyone's watching from Comox, I want to go back someday. I miss the weather in the winter. I love the West Coast. I don't know, though. The politics is so crazy. This is a province that has seen overdoses from heroin skyrocket because they've got excuse my language, damn many so-called supervised injection sites spread out across the province, especially in Vancouver, in the Lower Mainland. They've got so many of these places where addicts can go and legally shoot up. And of course, it's safe because there's a doctor or nurse in the vicinity. Doesn't stop them the next night from shooting up someplace else and killing themselves. Because what it does when you allow that to happen is perpetuates addiction. It doesn't stop it. It doesn't impede it. It doesn't in any way solve the problem, which is people putting heroin in their veins. That's the problem. And that should be dealt with treatment. And that should be dealt with not by making it easier, but by making it more difficult. Clearly, it's not working. But my question is, sorry to get off track, folks. How much punishment does one province have to take before it finally realizes the new Democratic Party is bankrupt of ideas? They're selling the stupid concept that there's such a thing as a safe supply of heroin out there, that the government sanctions it makes it safe. This is a crazy province politically. It's a wonderful place. The people, I still stay in contact with, but it's also hopped up on euthanasia too. I mean, some of the doctors out there, it's incredible when you listen to their justification for euthanasia. So that's where we are with the BC election. I hope and pray the NDP lose this. Of course, the Green Party is even more radical than the NDP, and they will support the NDP in some kind of coalition government if they have to. So I'm going to put up some of your comments while we're talking here. Skid Row has a lot of addicts because of year-round weather, hence Vancouver. Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. Safe supply is like a government that doesn't lie. That's true. Serena Suderman, you've been a participant on Stand on Guard for a long time. Thank you for participating this morning. And I'm just trying to put up some of your comments here. Maybe all Canadians should sue Justin Trudeau. Rob Adams. Yeah, maybe so. So I'm going to play you, first of all, show you some stories that I've written on I just have to take your comments down for a second before I do this here. Kamala Harris proposes Trudeau-style communist government housing plan. Now, this came out of the blue early in the campaign. And you have to remember, Kamala Harris was never intended to be the Democratic Party nominee. When it became apparent to everybody that Joe Biden was suffering from severe dementia, which we all knew, anybody who could watch Joe Biden at work, it was obvious that there was a severe problem here. But when it became obvious to the mainstream media, and they had to admit this guy couldn't put a sentence together anymore during a debate, Kamala Harris suddenly became the nominee. Joe Biden was forced out by Nancy Pelosi, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and this has all been admitted now. It's not, Biden said so afterwards. He hasn't talked to Nancy Pelosi since she pushed him out. But Kamala Harris becomes the nominee overnight. She didn't get a single vote in the primaries. And suddenly she's talking like Justin Trudeau. And it's absolutely incredible. So she's got this Trudeau-style housing plan, and it's just like Justin Trudeau. We're going to put billions of dollars into government housing, and it's going to look like Soviet block-style housing where nobody owns anything. Mm-hmm. Then he comes up with the idea that the government is going to lease the land to developers who are then going to build affordable housing on it. Big assumption there, folks. Yeah. And of course, nobody is ever going to own the land. The people living, incredibly, this could involve affordable housing in terms of homes. So your home will be on property you never own. And the developer doesn't even own it. The government owns it. Sounds like communism to me. But that, of course, is exactly where Kamala Harris is going. And let's see here. Now, I'm going to show you this one first, because Trudeau, of course, is still threatening that if grocery stores don't lower your prices, we're going to get you. So once again, he shows his complete misunderstanding of how economics works. You can't artificially tell people to lower their prices, because that means they won't be able to buy the produce to fill their shelves. So you will have empty shelves like you do in communist countries. You know, and that's where Trudeau was going with this idea. And guess what? Kamala Harris had the same idea. Axios did an article about this. Axios tends to be very pro-Democrat, very pro Kamala Harris. But Kamala Harris has talked about getting those price gougers. How? Well, punishing them, making them pay, making them reduce their prices. And of course, what that results in is absolute insanity. Now, I've played you a clip at the beginning here. This, to me, is emblematic of the whole campaign. I'm trying to... Here. Controlling food prices, that's Kamala's deal. Donnie, yeah, exactly. That is Kamala's deal. But I want to show you this clip again, because this is just from a couple of days ago, but it's emblematic of the absolute hatred that Kamala Harris has for Christians. Let me make sure we get back to the beginning here.
Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
The smaller one down the street. Meaning the church? Or a Trump rally? Probably a church, actually. And that is emblematic. Of course, Justin Trudeau is very hostile towards Christians, even his own Catholic faith. Even his own Catholic faith. When I always call Justin Trudeau a smorgasbord Catholic. And you know what I mean by that, is that he picks and chooses those doctrines that he likes, and he rejects those doctrines he doesn't like, such as abortion. The Catholic Church is very strong pro-life, very strong against abortion. Justin Trudeau thinks abortion is a sacrament. He would replace any of the church's sacraments with abortion, because he really thinks it's a blessed event. That's how he talks about abortion. He thinks it's constitutionally protected. It's not. He thinks women really get a kick out of having an abortion, that it's somehow a way to exhibit freedom. This is how sick this man is. But that, of course, is how he feels about that doctrine, so he rejects it. So I call it smorgasbord Catholicism, because just like when you're going to a smorgasbord buffet, you can pick and choose what you want for dinner and what you don't want. And this is what Trudeau does with Catholic doctrine. He also hates evangelical Christians. He has said on many occasions that evangelicals have no historical place in Canada. They've added nothing to Canadian history, which of course is utter rubbish. In fact, a lot of the early leaders of the Liberal Party were in fact evangelical Christians. Alexander Mackenzie. There's others. And Justin Trudeau, of course, is oblivious to that history, because he thinks the Liberal Party was founded on humanistic ideas and far left doctrines and woke ideology, even though the term didn't even exist, of course, when the Liberal Party was founded. But that's where Justin Trudeau comes from. He is so hostile to Christianity, just like Kamala Harris. Now let's listen to Kamala Harris going berserk here. And this is classic Kamala Harris projection, which Justin Trudeau does all the time. Let's listen to this. This is from the interview, the Fox News interview with Bret Baier last week, which was a fiasco for Kamala Harris. And by the way, if you read the mainstream media reviews of it, so many of them tried to put the best front possible. That, oh, she took those tough questions. You know.
Both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
Trump himself responding to the interview with a post on Truth Social, saying in part, "Congratulations to Bret Baier on a tough but very fair interview, one that clearly showed how totally incompetent Kamala is."
Exactly. Yes, totally incompetent. But do you recognize something here? She's talking about Donald Trump, obviously, in this summation. This guy is trying to lock up his political opponent. What do you think Joe Biden has been doing for the last 4 years? He's been trying to lock up Donald Trump with lawfare, constantly hauling him off to court for cases that are really not just frivolous, but almost ludicrous. In fact, this one in New York City that continues, that he was actually convicted on, which is utter rubbish, that there was a payment made. And this was somehow broke a law. And nobody can even explain what law was broken with that one. But he has been tested constantly by judicial system. And who's putting their political opponents in jail after the January 6th Capitol riot? People who just walked through the Capitol area were sent to jail without bail, without trial. Some of them were sitting there for a year or more. Now that's locking up your political opponents. What does Justin Trudeau do in terms of projection? Well, let's listen.
We have seen around the world a rise of populist right-wing forces in just about every democracy that we've seen. And it is of concern to see political parties choosing to instrumentalize anger, fear, division, anxiety. My approach has always been to respond to it, to...
This is classic Justin Trudeau projection. So it's those right-wing populists that are the danger to democracy, not you, who cracks down on peaceful protest with the Emergencies Act, not you, who freezes the bank accounts of peaceful protesters and their supporters. You don't reason with people you disagree with. You put them in jail. You freeze their bank accounts. You bring down the full force of the police against them. Does he put them in jail? Ask Tamara Leach or Chris Barber. You put them in jail for what? Telling people to protest peacefully? And don't give me this nonsense that you are what? You are reasoning with people?
Understand it and to look to solve it, to roll up our sleeves, work hard, and with ambition.
Roll up our sleeves. How many times does Justin Trudeau use that nauseating phrase every week? He's always rolling up his sleeves. And now, of course, he's beyond politics. He's not there to get into politics because, well, that's just too nasty right now. That's just too uncomfortable for me to talk about politics because I'm not here to dispute. I'm here to govern. I'm here to be in control. And my God, if we don't have another election, that might not be too bad because Canadians don't want elections. Melanie Jolie told us that. They don't want elections. They just want us to govern. So forget those elections and we'll just keep on governing forever and ever and ever.
Ambition for this country and for our future. And I continue to be convinced The Canadians are thoughtful about the challenges we're facing and ready to see them solved, rather than just allow themselves to be have their anger amplified without any solutions offered.
Incredible. Annie, every time I see him, I just want to hurl. Yeah, I know it's a shared it's a shared expectation. I always feel that way when I listen to Justin Trudeau, because he constantly lies. But here you go. Projection from Justin Trudeau, projection from Kamala Harris. And let's just watch a bit more of that interview. And then I want to, because we are 2 weeks away from the U.S. election. And I have to address this on this show, because we are a transnational broadcast in terms of who we're reaching out to, because we have an American audience as well. We need to emphasize the fact that Kamala Harris will be a disaster if she is elected. Even worse than Joe Biden. But it's not that Kamala Harris will be in control any more than Joe Biden has been in control. It's the people behind her. Because these politicians no longer have any will of their own. They are completely in the power, in the pocket of the World Economic Forum and other globalist agencies that are all feeding them the same talking points. Why do you think they all talk the same? Why do you think they all have the same policies? Why do you think Justin Trudeau projects about his political opponents being the really bad people, the dangerous ones? And if I have time, I'll show you one where he talks about Pierre Poilievre doing exactly what he's doing. Pierre Poilievre doing exactly what Justin Trudeau's doing. This is how he operates. This is how Kamala Harris operates. It's not Joe Biden and I. It's Donald Trump who's locking up his political opponent. It's time to turn the page on Donald Trump, even though he was president 4 years ago. This is the irrationality of their argument. Let's listen to a little bit of this from Sky News.
Today was a bad day for the Kamala Harris campaign. Her interview on Fox News was a train wreck, a hot mess on a number of levels. In Brett Baier, she faced a real interviewer who asked pertinent questions about the border, inflation, her record, and she floundered. She was evasive, she was incoherent, she was sometimes nonsensical. Whoever in her team thought she was ready for a real interview should be sacked immediately. Let's have a look at some of the more notable moments. I could play you the whole interview, but we don't have the time.
Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country.
More than 70% of people.
Who's dividing the country with identity politics? And she almost said it. With every time she says burdened, watch out.
Tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
No one knows what you're talking about, Kamala. You and Biden have been in power for almost 4 years. The Democrats have been in power 12 of the last 16 years, but everything is Donald Trump's fault, apparently. We're turning the page from Trump. Now watch here as she tries to filibuster and mislead about what the Biden-Harris administration's record on illegal immigration has been. But for once, her nonsense is called out because this interviewer knows the facts.
How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you
now,
just a number? Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have an
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration.
And of course, 6 million is ridiculously low. It's at least 25 million, probably 40 million. This is what I've heard from my source, the former Customs and Border Protection Deputy in Charge, J.J. Carroll. He's been on this show. He's told me it's 40 million. 40 million illegals coming across the border, being flown across the United States to their destinations of choice. And how about those children who have disappeared? 300,000, maybe probably closer to 600,000 children who have been sold into sex slavery, if we can say that word, without being chastised. But that's the reality, folks.
Immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies.
Within hours of taking the oath was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate, and they didn't bring up that bill.
I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people.
Just waffle, no answers. She doesn't have anything significant, substantial to say about these critical issues. Now watch here as Kamala gets all heated up, ranting and raving about Trump wanting to lock up.
Yeah, and we saw that. We saw that earlier. So
the good of our nation.
You know, and so I leave this to you now because we're getting short on time here. I know I don't like to go past 30 minutes, especially on Sunday morning. I encourage you, by the way, as I will this morning. I'm going to church this morning. I sometimes miss, and I shouldn't. But if your preference is a synagogue or a temple, please go and show that you have the time to go and participate in worship this morning, if that is your choice, because we have gotten so used to sitting at home, watching television, staring at our computer screens, staring at our phones constantly. Get out and talk to real people, because if we don't exercise that democratic right of free assembly, freedom of religion, and freedom of speech, I tell you, this government is going to take them all away. They tried to do that during the pandemic, and do you think they're finished with pandemics? God knows they're not. God knows they're not finished with trying to force vaccines on us, trying to force masking on us, trying to force social distancing on us, trying to force us so we can't go anywhere except strip clubs and the liquor store. Can't go to church. Can't go to other kind of meetings because that's unhealthy. But hey, you can always go to the nightclub. As long as you sit at your table, of course, and don't move too far. So what's going to happen this week? And I say I'm losing people already by saying this, but what's going to happen this week as Trudeau returns? You're going to see perhaps one of the most consequential weeks in Canadian politics in a long time. Justin Trudeau is going to be held to account by probably about 50 members of Parliament. He is going to have to decide what to do with that. Does he still have enough support amongst his cabinet? Of course he does. Will he rule by decree? Yes. Will he ignore the dissent? Of course he will. But I'm telling you, he's not going to prorogue because he doesn't want to lose the legislation that he's got in place right now, including the Online Harms Act, which will be coming up for a second reading any week now. He prorogues. It's unlikely that he's going to get the Online Harms Act passed. And besides, if he hasn't prorogued by now, it's almost not worth his while because he's looking at another month and a half before he breaks. I'm convinced, though, listening to Justin Trudeau's words and how delusional he is, that he really does want an election. He really does want to go after Pierre Poilievre because he believes he can beat him. And I think that's the Trudeau you're going to see in the House of Commons this week. Crazy, delusional, out of touch with reality. And this is the guy, somebody joked the other day, I think it might have been one of the comments here actually, that Trudeau is going to be literally taken from the House of Commons in a straitjacket, kicking and screaming, because he's going to have a complete breakdown, because he's unable to face reality. That's entirely possible, folks. It's entirely possible that Justin Trudeau could have a complete breakdown and decide, I'm king of the world, because that's how he sees himself. And I think I'm going to stick to my original prediction that we're going to see an election sooner than the spring. That's what some of the Liberals are talking now about, a spring election. Whoops, they weren't supposed to say that. But I think we could see it sooner because Justin Trudeau has become completely unhinged, and he really does believe he can do anything he wants right now. And he wants to go out victorious. 20 points behind in the polls? Doesn't matter. He can make that up. He can make that up, he thinks, except he can't. So it's going to be an exciting week, and I'll be with you every day as we watch and we wait and we see what happens. And want to get some good interviews going next week, too, with folks who are there and watching, because this is exciting material. And it's a great time to be watching politics, but it's also a very dangerous time because we have a leader who's out of control, and we have a Liberal Party that is increasingly unable to govern. Thank you for watching today, folks, and I appreciate your comments. I've been trying to put some of them up here. Michelle Boulay. Kamala is some kind of mix of Trudeau, Freeland, and Valérie Plante, Mayor of Montreal. A crazy mix. Very true. And thanks for your comments today. This might be the honk. Thanks all. I'll be with you again tomorrow. Remember, I'm trying to be giving you all the news you need to know, or at least the news you're not getting from other sources. And we need to continue to resolve to resist. For Stand on Guard, I'm David Creighton.